Hi Vishal, so a little bit about yourself and who you work for and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Vishal from Flint Property. We're a property developer. We do commercial and residential developments. The family also has a care home business as well, so quite a lot of interests across different property sectors.
Cool. And in terms of what brings you here?
I met Savills a few years ago. We had a number of sort of vacant properties at the time. And he kind of helped us make use of that vacant space, and rather than just sit there empty, get partner with some charities, get them in there, and make use of the valuable space these days.
Cool. And two quick more questions. One is, anything in particular that surprised you in terms of working with Savills? What the results have been?
Speed, so really quick, gets everything done quickly. With these sort of things and business rates and councils, you always think it's going to take a long time, but with Savills on board, it was all seamless and fast, which was really good.
Great. And in terms of what you're hoping to get from coming here today?
Just to see where the market's going and see what's happening with business rates, and just learn more about what we'll be doing in the future working with Savills.
Great.
My name is Simon Westgarth. I'm CEO of Richmond Furniture Scheme. It's a furniture reuse project, I'll get my words out, based in Twickenham.
And in terms of, you've had experience of working with Savills?
Yes. So in the furniture game especially, you need space. We always need space. We're always running out of space, given the fact that we've been increasing the amount and quantity of items that we take every year. So having space for storage has been absolutely brilliant. And Savills and I have worked together on that over the last 5 years. And we've also, where possible, even had a pop-up store as well. So we were able to trade from that location.
Great. And some of the biggest results from that, doing that?
Net benefit on when we were trading was around about £20,000 on the bottom line, but I think it was over 24,000 that we got in the time that we were there. So there's a financial benefit. The impact benefit is the fact that we can deal in more furniture, so we're saving more product from potentially going into landfill, and it also just means that we've got more stuff for people to be able to choose from, so it's improving people's choice, and effectively that makes the whole process for them an awful lot better.
Fantastic. Anything in particular you're hoping to get from being here this evening?
Contacts, useful. Useful to see other people who are both sort of in landlords, in that side of the market, other charities as well, of course, because never a bad thing to network with other charity partners, and also just to get a sort of a general understanding of people's experiences at the moment. Interesting times in terms of the economy, in terms of what's going on in the markets and so on. So good to pick all of those things up.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks very much, Sam.
All right.
I'm here with a small panel, very knowledgeable panel though, and we're here to help you navigate what keeps changing when it comes to rates in particular, but also the wider concept of commercial voids and what you can do to avoid them becoming a liability and transforming them into an asset whilst you're figuring out what to do with these spaces. So see how your empty commercial spaces can become assets, not liabilities. So my name's Shailesh Patel. I will introduce you to myself and the panel in a moment. So just to give you a rough idea on timings, I've been asked to talk really fast compared to what I've done before. So it's not 300 slides like the last time. It's a lot shorter. 299. There's 298, not quite. So it'll be a lot quicker, but you're welcome to ask questions. So if there's something you want to know and you don't think we've covered it, please feel free to ask, because we've got a London Assembly member here. We've also got a rates guru here, myself, who doesn't know actually that much, but I just talk a lot. And we've got a shopping centre manager with some really good experience as well. And obviously the room's got landlords, funders, all sorts of characters in the room. So feel free to ask questions. So there'll be networking at the end as well. And feel free to eat as much as you can, because otherwise I have to take it all home. I'm going to quickly invite Streets of Growth to the front. So Darren Way is the founder of the charity that's kindly given us this space. We had a bit of an emergency situation. We had to change venue last week, and they've pulled out all the stops and made this happen. So I would like Darren to pop in, if you can see him, and he'll quickly tell you about our history together and this space. And you'll find this quite interesting, not just from my perspective, but also what this charity does is absolutely amazing. So Darren, if you could come to the front, tell us your story, and be careful of the health and safety hazards that you've set up for me, just to test my agility.
I've only got 4 or 5 minutes, so I'll try.
Oh, Darren, if you could
yes.
do it here, that'd be great. Thank you. Request from the video man.
I'm really condensing 30 years into 4 minutes. I'm a failed school leaver and I'm not proud of it. I grew up on a council estate that's in this borough that you're in now called Tower Hamlets. And in 1979, when we were kids growing up, I never knew that we were in the 4th most socially deprived borough in the UK, because everyone was in the same boat. We lived in poverty. Growing up, you either got involved in employment and you moved on. Most people in my community who moved on, moved out, so we lost all our community role models because they didn't want to be in the shit. And then those that stayed often got involved in drugs, criminality, and now you're seeing all what you're seeing on the telly now that ain't new to my world, with child criminal exploitation, modern slavery, and the knife-ins and stuff. Trying to do something in my own neighbourhood as a neighbour. I was a painter and decorator going to drama school. Started to get involved with young people on the flats in the streets, going up at night, being told to fuck off. And then my community not really supporting me to try and get these kids out of gangs. Even my mates that were involved in drug dealing and gangs then started to think that I was a grass, so people wanted me to move out of my own neighbourhood. But what kept me there was my values. I wanted these kids to have what we didn't have, and it's still going on more today. Now, I'll give you that little backstory. We were working with white, black, Asian, whoever, right? I was like a one-man street gang. 2001, 10 quid, 2 chairs. Set up Streets of Growth. That's all we had. And the first week we got £4 funding to get computers, to get kids computers, to get into careers. Local gangbangers rammed our shop and stole the lot to run me out of town. I went and faced these gangs and said, listen, you ain't running me out of town, right? I'm gonna build a gang that's far bigger than you'll ever be. 23 years on, you're now in Streets of Growth's epicentre. This is my space. All from that moment. However, it wasn't that simple, because we had a little shop front on a 1-year rolling lease, couldn't get 2-year funding because I only had a 1-year lease. Had that for 10 years. Went to a print factory before they turned it into luxury apartments, then was just booted out. And that was going to be the end of Streets of Growth 2015. And I had to almost say, the gang can go no further. I was employing white people, black people, Asian, all different ethnicities, all with the values of belonging, generosity, independence, competence, and interdependence. You know, what religion you were, whatever, we said that everyone who comes from this world has the right to belong. And that's what we were about. But we were about to close. 2015, shut down. And then someone said to me, do you know a guy called Shalish? No, I don't. Try and have a word with him. Shalish came, spoke to me, had a meanwhile space in Marshall on the Isle of Dogs. He said, I can give it to you, but it's only on a meanwhile, but it might get you to the next step. We were in that space for 4 years. 4 years we were in that space. And in that time, we started winning loads of awards. All those years before the 15 years that we'd done, now we were becoming an overnight success. People were coming over to Canary Wharf and seeing this redundant office that we'd transformed into a youth intervention centre for 15 to 21-year-olds. We were dealing with kids that were being child criminally exploited, sexually exploited. Some of our young people have been shipped to different countries, and we've got them back into the UK. We don't have county lines, it's bigger than that. We have bus lines. We've got kids who are being bused from Aldgate to Mile End. So if we're worried about child criminal exploitation in county lines, we've got borough lines. It's getting that bad. Most of our kids who carry knives would never use them. They think that if they're carrying a knife, they won't get stabbed. The biggest issue amongst poverty for my young people is fear. They're scared. They don't know if they've got a future here. They're watching how people are being treated around the world. They're not sure that they have a space. And it's our job as adults to make our young people believe they have a future worth working for. So that's what my charity do. We specialise in this work. And how we came about this space that you're in now, as I conclude, is that when Unite students who do student accommodation were doing the diggings, they came across an old Elizabethan era theatre in the ground, And then the council brought in MoLA, Museum of London, and they said, if you're going to build this building, you're going to have to put a building space at the bottom that represents that. So this is a theatre. And they put it out to tender for organisations. And what was weird, and I conclude on this story and just finish with a bit on Shalish, is that over the years, as a founder of Streets of Growth, I became very bitter that in doing all this with our community, that I had to move from this space to that space to that space. I became really bitter. The irony of it is, when we were interviewed for this space, it was because we showed how we could work with all those diverse spaces that they said that we would be the perfect organisation to work in this space. So all that anger and resentment was actually the apprenticeship to be, and being able to work with Shalish in the Meanwhile space. They were so intrigued with what we did with the Meanwhile space over in Marsh Wall, they said they'd never heard of it. They were just astonished. And the fact of how multicultural we were, multi-faith, people with no faith. Today, every young person goes for a 2-year model here. We're not a quick fix. We're doing some real down and dirty work out there. We've worked with 5,600 young people, each in a 2-year model. Each in a 2-year model. Shalish, I'll be honest with you, I have to be really straight here. Shalish will tell you I'm a straight talking guy. I'm an East London and I don't bullshit. I won't go like, oh, wasn't this person great because they'll give me £5,000. Right? You have to earn my respect because I have to earn the respect of the gangs I work with. What I'll tell you, if I never met him, I wouldn't be here now and you wouldn't be sat there. That's the power of what's happened. That's the gang he's building. If you want to know what community looks like, look what he's built here. This is it. There is no rocket science to this, but it's become rocket salad. This is it. This is how you build community. You don't even believe, oh, well, I'm not out there doing, no, the fact that you're actually supporting orgs like us and orgs like, you're doing gang work. You are the real deal. This is it. Thank you so much. And I have to say, I'll take my hat off to this man because I can count some people on my hand who I really respect. He's one of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. I wish I'd put him at the end because I don't know how anyone's going to follow that, to be honest with you. But listen, our job at ASTOP is we're just a conduit. We're about making sure charities can get help from commercial-minded people as well. So it's about the balance. So part of my job is to just make sure and understand the numbers. So one of the things that I've learned from Darren over the last few years is to send someone to prison and all the court and all that sort of stuff for misbehaving, and however you define that, is about £129,000 per annum. And it costs £1 million to investigate a youth murder. Every single youth murder costs £1 million. He can transform people's lives through this organisation for £5,000 a year. So in some ways, if you look at the economics of, okay, how do we make a difference in someone's life? The prevention element is far better than dealing with the impact of what actually happens. So hats off to Darren and the crew because they do the hard work. I'd be too scared to walk down the street and talk to someone with a knife. I'd just be running the other way. But hats off to them. And thank you to you guys because those spaces, the Canary Wharf one, the other ones that we've helped with charities like that, that's what makes this possible. So I just wanted to give you that bit of background to Streets of Growth who have kindly given us this space. They're also in one of our buildings around the corner doing extra project work as well. So just wanted to give you some background to that. Okay, so a bit more about us. So Shalish, ASTOP, I'm the director of it. I also work closely with a charity called Temporary Use Aid. You'll see a Roulette banner hidden somewhere, I think, with some of their branding called Rainbow Rising. And this is all we do all day long, is we're like an estate agent, but we only help charities and give them rent-free space. And the other side of that is we make sure that they understand landlords and landlords understand charities, and we kind of bridge that whole thing in the middle. And Temporary Use Aid is one of the charities we work with a lot. You'll hear more about that later on. We're getting better at what we do and getting better at communicating it, so you can see some awards that we've won, sometimes in isolation, sometimes in conjunction with someone like Sanjay from Savills. So at least it kind of helps communicate that message a little bit more as well. We've got a lot of videos on our website, so we're going to skip some of the subjects that we've covered in more depth before, for example, insurance, planning consultants. I'll touch on them briefly during today, but you'll find a lot of that online, and we'll obviously send you some more information after tonight as well. Okay, so our speakers for today are Sanjay, who looks after a shopping centre in Hyde Barnet. He's also looking after one of the offices that we've got. So he's a senior guy within the Savills property management team. We've got Bassam Mahfouz, who's a London Assembly member for Ealing and Hillingdon. He's also the ex-CEO for a charity called Refugee Action Kingston, which is a charity that we gave space to, so he can kind of bring that double perspective to it. And then Tom Perry, who I'll introduce you later on, but he's got a few nicknames, so it's going to take about 5 minutes to run through that as well. Tom Bond, yes. Holloway Bond, yes, absolutely. Okay, so why we're here today. So you guys are here to taking your time out for us, and thank you for that. So there's an ongoing landscape change when it comes to rates and empty buildings. This is very much crystal ball gazing, not just from us, but all of us in the room. We don't know where things are going to go, how long things are going to take. So we're kind of there to help you on that journey as best as we can. There is a government consultation that supposedly closes at the end of March, is the deadline that we were given, I think, back in October or November. Very open-ended one, but they said during March it will close, and it's about business rates, avoidance, exploitations. It didn't say they were fundamentally going to change it, but they're talking about reviewing it. So luckily we've got Bassam who can answer some questions on that. And we did our own survey off the back of that as well. We went out to various people because we wanted to get views for ourselves, but also to pass that on just to make sure different people's views are taken into account there. So we'll run you through the results of that. And then kind of our hot topic for today is the growth in ESG, environmental social governance and corporate social responsibility. So this is becoming a new, more normal measure over and above just measuring things in money. And you'll hear some stories about that. And tax breaks. It's nice to work with the tax man rather than against them. So you've got an article from the Guardian newspaper just came out this weekend about some characters that are not playing a fair game. So you're welcome to read about that. You'll hear a little bit about it from Mr. Bond over here. And he'll also explain to you how to play fair or play roulette. So it's up to all of us in this room to protect the reputation of the property sector, and or we gamble. Okay, so who's here today? So what we like to do, and you've kind of heard it from Darren, I couldn't have given him the space if I wasn't talking to landlords all the time and understanding what their problems are, what their timeline is for spaces. So what we try to do is bring lots of different characters into a room. A lot of these guys are doing wonderful work in isolation, but it's not until they start talking to people from slightly different industries when magic really happens. So we've got all sorts of characters. We've got lawyers in the room who, again, I'll point out later on, because they will give you the comfort of knowing that before and after and during a relationship with one of the ASTOP charities, your asset is safe. We've got in the insurance sector, we've heard from before, that will also give you the comfort of actually doing something with an empty building is better than leaving it empty. We've got the likes of Sanjay, who's going to talk about facilities and centre management, landlords, agents, accountants. I'm an accountant by background, so I can bring that really boring, dry element to you guys as well. And then lawmakers and national government, and hence we've got Bassam as well, developers, funders, councils. So all sorts of characters are in the room, so hopefully you'll enjoy that. Okay. This has become a bit of a standard slide for us, actually. Not everything we're going to say you're going to like, because not everyone is a fan of any form of tax, particularly business rates. But please don't shoot the messenger. We're doing our best to predict things so you guys are well prepared. And that tax is not going to disappear. I think I'm safe in saying that. It's not going to be an income stream that the taxman is going to just let go of and say, oh, we're going to waive it completely. We're going to find other ways to raise tax. So please don't expect that from us or any of the speakers. But that's just one of the things that we wanted to say up front. So please don't shoot us during the course of this presentation. Okay, so Tom's not happy about his picture, but then no one really is when they're up here. So Tom, I like to call him the fisherman because he gets a little bit excited about all sorts of weird subjects. Like if you ask him, what's a snail farm? He'll tell you, but he'll say, actually, the rules is not just about snail farms, it's about marine animals that you farm. So he'll get really passionate. It's my job to rein him in, so I'll be standing right next to him, and he and I will be working together to explain to you what are the various loopholes that people are trying to exploit and the legitimate ways of managing rates. So, fisherman, you're welcome to come up, mate. I'll click for you and keep you under control.
Thank you.
After you.
No, I mean, Bassam just suggested Mr. Bond. I think maybe that could replace fisherman, maybe?
Might do.
I think that might be slightly better. I've also heard Apprentice to the Dark Lord recently, which... Yes, I'm not sure about that one either, but...
It's a Darth Vader link, though.
Nice. Do I go next slide? What do you want me to do here?
So absolutely. We're going to do a lot of this together because this is very much about my experiences of what we've seen And Tom can bring the legal side to it. Because again, sometimes we'll get passionate about it and say, oh, this just feels wrong. And they'll say, well, actually, in the law, it's right, but you can look at this from another angle as well. So this is a roulette wheel we created. And the theme here is, how do we want to go forward as a sector? We want to carry on gambling and it's like playing chess with the taxman. You make a move, they'll make a move, etc., etc. But if we kind of just play a little bit fair, then we just move our way away from this concept as well. So this is the options you have to avoid empty rates. We'll run through them very quickly. We'll go to them in a little bit more depth on the next slide. But this is everything we really want to focus on for today. And we'll kind of hopefully take you on a journey on what you can do better if you're not already doing these things. So 0, we think, is the answer. We'll come back to that in a bit more depth. Corporate social responsibility, environmental social governance. Work with the charity sector because it brings you multiple feathers under one hat. So A, you'll save money. B, you're helping the charity sector. You're helping the community, the likes of Darren, real life people. You'll hear some more stories like that. And that is pretty much the best way to go if you've got a building that is otherwise empty. And lo and behold, you may end up with a long-term tenant as a result, or something a little bit different like what's happened with the Unite accommodation upstairs. This is something that they love. And it's just something that works for everyone. Snail farms, control yourself, Tom. You can talk about it later on. But that's one that he'll expand on, because it's one where people are saying, oh, it's a farm. I've got one in Chancery Lane. I've put a snail box in an office in Chancery Lane. I don't have to pay rates. It's like, are you serious? But if you want to take on Camden Council, you can. Manage insolvencies. People used to have friends that would set up a company for them, which would go bust 2 days after the tenancy starts, and say, it's not my fault they went bust. Liquidators don't pay rates, so no one pays rates, and this could go on indefinitely. That has been deemed to be, I think, borderline a crime.
Yeah. I think that one's stopped.
But yeah. Now. So some of these ones are kind of already ineffective. So we'll run through the list. There's a few more there. We'll kind of go through them as we go along. But you can kind of get the gist as to some are good, some are bad, and just
some are really bad.
Some are really bad. Yeah. And we'll kind of just take you on that journey as a whole. Okay. Shall I click?
Yeah, go for it.
Right. So we've kind of split this into 2 categories for you. The ones that are already ineffective, but we think the government might squeeze some of them a bit more just to make sure that people don't try it on again. The ones to watch, which are in black, and again, the one that we think is safe, which is the green one. Tom, do you want to talk about snail farms?
Yes, I can't wait.
60 seconds.
So the idea was, I don't know if any of you remember it, but it was towards the end of last year, there was a bit of a news story where there was a large office block in Liverpool, I believe, and effectively the council had been in there and it was just full of these shoe boxes of snails. The idea behind it is they're saying that it's used to grow snails for human consumption, which is obviously ludicrous. I think they worked out that the snails being grown in there, you could possibly sell the 50 odd shoe boxes for a total of about £100. So obviously the main purpose of it is to try and avoid business rates. I think effectively, I don't actually know of one instance of this working. I honestly believe what the snail farmers do is they more use it as a facade. It's quite eye-catching when a councillor goes in there and it gets a bit of a story. I imagine what they're actually doing is one of the other methods, but it's obviously takes the eye a bit. It's a bit of a mouthful, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a snail pun there. I haven't got one. Yeah. So
once you put a snail farm in and the tax man comes after you, if the council can be bothered, this is the other thing. They kind of hope the councils can't bother to take you to court and all the other faff that comes with it because they're under-resourced. If they do, then the court will say, this is a farce, you need to pay the rates. And at that point, then they'll say, oh, my company's going to go bust.
Yeah.
And then it goes into liquidation. So it's almost like getting 2 or 3 bites of the cherry. So you've tried the snail farm thing, that didn't work. You can say you had the snail farm there for 91 days and then claim 3 months rates relief. And if that doesn't work, then you can go into kind of liquidation status. So all of these, it takes a lot of effort for a council to undo this stuff or actually fight it. And some councils don't bother. The likes of Camden, City of London, will take you to the cleaners over something like that, but it's a lot of effort. And then you need to prove that this was a deliberately fraudulent, is that too strong a word? Are we allowed to say that?
I think the snail farms, I don't think there's little debate there, to be honest.
Okay, and then it's this effort to kind of get through all of this stuff. So the reason we're mentioning all this is when it comes to what we think is going to happen next and how the government's going to try and stop this sort of manoeuvring game that happens, you'll see kind of the solutions that they'll come up with. Managed insolvency, very similar. Again, there was a case, I believe, that says...
It's Hurstwood v. Rosendale. And the idea is that we're making special purpose vehicles which only existed to go into liquidation or dissolve, and they would grant a lease to these companies, and then the concept is then that where the debt is held by a company that is insolvent, it then passes to the Crown, and the company, by the landlord, theoretically doesn't pay anything. The courts, it reached the Supreme Court in 2022 and was quite emphatically shut down. I think the judges there were almost suggesting this could be a criminal activity in the sense that it's a misuse of your role as a director. I think it's probably stopped since then. The way they shut it down is they just said these companies actually had no physical right to occupy. I think that's often what they're going to do to shut down the snail farms and maybe some of the others that we might mention, is that if you create this sham company and have it for what is ultimately just tax avoidance, no matter if it's snails going insolvent or religious worship, as we might touch on later, it's not going to work. And I think that's all stemmed from that Hurstwood case. So this one is kind of conclusively done.
I think just two things I'd like to clarify on this one. So if you're a landlord of a Paper Chase or a Debenhams or someone like that, you've got nothing to worry about if they go under 2 or 3 days after you sign them up as a tenant, because there's no way you would have known that they were about to fail. So that is safe.
Yeah, it's not saying that. It's only when you are granting it solely to these companies that only exist to go. If you grant it to a company and they happen to go, that's obviously fine. But if you grant it to someone knowing that this business is going to go insolvent and you've agreed, right, you need to go insolvent, I'm only going to give you this lease if you go insolvent, that's when you're in trouble.
Okay, and then the other one is if you have someone, if you, as a landlord, kind of know, or you should know, that when you've given this lease out, it's all a bit of a farce, there's an increased risk of the court saying, we're going to pierce the veil of incorporation and we're going to go after the landlord.
Yeah, they'll say the lease was invalid, and despite the fact that you've given the lease to this company, they'll just say this wasn't a valid lease. You actually didn't impart the right of occupation to this limited company, and ultimately the landlord would stay liable and they'll be on the hook for the rates rather than the operator of such a scheme.
Okay, so is that what's currently happening in that Guardian newspaper article with Dover Council?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so that's where it's at. I'm sure someone's going to try and appeal it, but if common sense plays out, then this will probably still be the outcome. But I'm no judge, so I can't say that for sure.
Yeah, if we wanted to touch on place of worship, we might be skipping a bit, but yeah, that is...
Let's save our prayers for later. We'll do that later.
Nice.
Guardians. We've actually got 2 Guardian companies in the room. So until about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe it's 8, Guardian schemes, as in putting someone not quite living there with a tenancy but living under a license, as a security arrangement, would get the organisation out of business rates. It would kind of shift to council tax. That closed down a few years back.
They've shut that down. So obviously there's still valid reasons to have a guardian to protect a property for security purposes, but I think the concept of this was a little bit more not for that. It was, the other purpose was to move it from business rates to council tax, which is capped at, you're not going to pay council tax for more than 4 or 5 grand, what business rates are uncapped really in terms of the rateable value. So it was always going to be a lot cheaper, and they've shut down that pathway to make it go from business rates to council tax.
Okay,
but
cool.
Obviously there is still the valid reasons to have security.
And look, that's no small thing. So both of the organisations there, 2 Guardian companies here, they do great work, and we've worked together, and sometimes they've got buildings, sometimes we've got buildings. But the business rates thing is something they can't help with, but the security and stuff is something that they are really, really good at. So please do kind of grab a chat with them as well afterwards. Small business rates relief, putting a mate's company into a relatively small room where the rateable value is less than 15,000. Would you like to explain that?
So effectively, small business rates relief, the concept is if you have one property, if you have a legal entity and it's your only property, then the government wants to kind of encourage small business. So it makes you fully exempt if your rateable value is below 12,000. It then phases up to 15,000, and anything over 15,000 is no longer eligible. So the concept here is if you have multiple offices within a block and you split it up and you put one, say, Shalish 1, Shalish 2, Shalish 3 limited in each of them, they could all theoretically qualify for small business rates relief and you'd be exempt. I think this one could work, but it involves so much legwork, and you are also running the risk that the council are going to be like, that lease isn't valid, these are all the same business in there, and you lose it all. So there is the risk. I think if it's done right, it works, but I think to do it right involves a huge amount of work, and you have to live with it as well.
Okay, so as an example, I think Tom mentioned this to me, so I think Westminster Council are really on top of this. So they'll look into the background history of each of these companies claiming small business rates relief and say, well, hold on, it was set up 3 days ago. It's very similar to this other one where you're also the director. And then they'll say things like, well, have you registered with HMRC for corporation tax, et cetera, and then filing accounts, and they'll just keep an eye on you. Some other councils will be like, yeah, fine, we'll just give it to you. They can't be bothered to look at it. But again, it seems to be a lot of effort. But
it's the important thing as well, which I didn't mention, is if you ever apply for small business rates relief, it's very clear when you apply for it that you are saying everything that you're submitting is correct, and they can take you to court for fraud if they believe it. So you are playing a dangerous game with it.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Box shifting and Bluetooth device using for what used to be 91 days. Sorry, it used to be 6 weeks.
Yeah.
43 days. That's gradually started shifting already. So we'll just run through England, Scotland, and Wales. We've put it on the already ineffective, but I think there might be a bit more squeezing going on. So just to run you through the 3 different countries, who've got slightly different approaches. It used to be 6 weeks. It changed to 13 weeks under the last Tory budget, which is just almost 12 months ago. So that started moving the box shifting and the Bluetooth device using model to not as effective as before. Kind of still works. In Wales, it moved from 6 weeks, 1.5 months, to 6 months before you can qualify for that relief. So that pretty much quashed it completely. It's just not worth paying rates for 6 months to get out of it for 3 months. So model doesn't really work there so much. Scotland went full out. Again, something I've learned from Tom. Basically, it's up to the local council to decide whether they think the applicant is worthy of MT rates relief. So on average, how many do you know of that in Scotland that actually give it?
They've devolved the whole issue. So I think each Scottish government, councils? Councils, yeah. That's my knowledge of Scotland there. They come up with their own rules. So I imagine in some councils it will work, but the vast majority aren't going to like this, and they'll follow the pattern there. I don't know the number, to be honest, but yeah. I don't think it's many.
Yeah, the ones I've seen, the Glasgows, the Edinburghs, are like, there's no relief whatsoever. Yeah. As soon as the tenant's gone, you're paying rates. They have got other things, like nice things, where if someone's there for 6 months, you might qualify for some sort of relief as an occupier after 6 months for months 7, 8, and 9. But it's not quite what was here before. And again, part of this is because it's a move by the government to quash the abuse that's been going on over the years.
I think it's going to go further in terms of stopping this as well, because there's currently a court case. I think it's in the High Court now, where effectively they're kind of disputing my point I made earlier about Hurstwood and the validity of the lease. Given the concept of this is you're occupying it for 13 weeks. Effectively, the company is granted a lease to occupy for 13 weeks, more or less purely to try and get another 3-month exemption afterwards. So I think the courts are really testing whether or not that lease is valid and whether or not the landlord actually did remain liable for that reset period. So it could be that later this year, if it reaches the Supreme Court, this gets shut down for good as well. It seems likely they might do little moves, like Shalish, I believe you think they might move to Wales and extend it to 26 weeks, but they could fully just end this as well.
Go Scottish.
Go Scottish.
All right, okay, fine. Okay.
Braveheart.
All right, no worries. So we've got the ones to watch there. We'll run through those as well. But I'll click onto the next slide so you can kind of see where we're going with this as well. So hopefully, if you want to take a picture of this slide, we'll obviously send this to you afterwards, but this slide and the next two, and the next slide as well at least, are probably the ones to kind of take as a takeaway as to what you think you might want to prepare for. We might get this completely wrong, but if we've got the rough gauge right, then these are the sorts of things that might be happening. So there might be the creation of a czar of the GAR. Do you want to explain what GAR is?
Yeah, it's a general anti-avoidance rule. I think it applies to every other tax, where if you're avoiding tax, then they can just be like, you're avoiding tax, this isn't working. That doesn't exist in business rates. There is no GAR for business rates. So one of the suggestions that the government have proposed in their consultation is the possible implementation of a GAR for business rates. That would kind of conclusively shut down a lot of what we see with the already ineffective schemes. My potential query of it is who is the czar, because I would like to know who that is. My knowledge of some of the larger agents is they do engage with some of the maybe unethical forms of rates mitigation, and I think they have an ear and a lot of power in the industry. So it would need to be someone who is impartial and will make the correct decision.
I think Tom's being a little bit polite here, so let's spell it out a little bit. So on one side, you've got agencies who will put one government agency up against another. So for example, NHS England tried to do box shifting in Harlow, and I think they saved quite a lot of money. It went to court. Harlow Council spent thousands of pounds on legal fees and lost. So one government agency won, one government agency lost. So the only real winners was the advising rating agency and some lawyers. And it's like, well, that doesn't feel right. So that's the sort of thing I think the czar is going to be around to stop. But going the other way, and this is another Tom story, I'll say it because he won't. There's a jewellery shop in Camden where just because they kind of keep the door locked to make sure the right sort of character's coming into the shop, the council has said no to retail leisure hospitality relief.
It's not even that. They sell wedding rings, so they work on an appointment-only model. So not really many people can walk in off the street. They only let people in because it's an intimate affair when you're purchasing your wedding ring. And effectively, they've said, Camden have decided that where there is that slight barrier, they subsequently don't qualify for retail relief, which is it's a lot of money to this small independent jewellery shop who are just trying to create the best possible customer experience. So yeah, that's always been my worry, is if the power is given too much to the councils, then you get the danger of they don't necessarily have the best interest in mind, or they might not make always the correct decision, at least in my opinion. But I do think this one should have got it. So.
Okay, all right, calm down. Okay, I can see Bassam scribbling everything down quite vigorously there, so hopefully it will be remembered. Okay, so the guardian of company law, making sure that if something's a crime, someone will go after the people that actually do this. Protect small business rates relief for the real people. Faster and fairer decisions, as covered by Tom. We had an interesting one. One of our shops is a free bookshop. And 40 locations around the country, every single council, except one, has said, yes, you're entitled to retail leisure hospitality relief. Because remember, that was introduced after COVID. It's like, okay, just because the pricing is set at zero, but people donate what they want, it's still in the spirit of having a shop like a Waterstones. But one council is absolutely adamant about not giving it to us because the pricing is zero. It's like, come on, guys.
They said it's not a sale. So
it's not a sale.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
So we might have to price those books at 1p a go. So let me know what you think about that. We'll see what happens. Okay, another one. So capping liquidations for legitimate ones, as well as, obviously the fake ones are kind of out anyway, but legitimate liquidations might be capped at 9 months. Because at the moment, if something goes into liquidation, whether it's Debenhams, Paperchase, or any of those guys, they'll stay with the tenancy holder's liquidator for forever and a day. There's no effort that they put in to disclaim a lease because it's not costing them any money, and it's not saving them any money either. But again, the government's kind of like, hold on, these buildings are sitting around doing nothing for months and then years, so they might put a cap on that because, again, it's about encouraging the reuse of and regeneration of these spaces. So we can see that as a potential one that might be coming. And then, as Tom mentioned, the cap, the squeeze, or actual squash. So the cap might be you can only claim empty rates relief for 3 or 6 months once a year, perhaps. That could be the cap, so you can't keep doing the repeat thing. To go Welsh, basically, is to extend the period before you qualify, and to go Scottish is just to say, we ain't having it unless it's decided at a local level or if the Tsar says yes. So these are, again, the manoeuvres that might be happening as a result of the consultation. Okay, the ones to watch. These are the ones where nothing's changed lately, but again, it's just something that might just crop up. Listed buildings, we've had ones where we were there, the landlord wanted the extra comfort of the security, but operating it as a business, and hence charitable use rather than guardians. And then when he sold it, we were told that the tenant, the buyer, was going to move in, and 3 years later in Lincoln's Inn Field, there's no one in there. And it's a listed building, so they're not paying any rates either. So again, there's probably an element of, well, if I'm not paying empty rates, there's no pressure for me as an owner to bring this back onto the market or make good use out of it. So again, we can expect that there might be a cap on those as well. Plus, these buildings deteriorate. If it's listed, the whole point of them being listed is to kind of keep that heritage going. So if there is a way to make sure that they're in use, then that's great. And that's part of the kind of encouraging them to be used properly. I'll cover the 1 month cap next in use because that's more of a charity thing, and then you can look after the other two. So some charities are being manipulated into asking councils for 100% relief rather than just 80 by saying that, okay, we've taken the lease today, we're not going to move in for a while because we're going to do like an artistic show for a day in 3 months' time. But because of that, we are entitled to 100% rates relief whilst it's empty. And then we use it for the day, and then we pay 80% for the day, and then we'll leave it empty for several months again. And there are charities out there who sadly have been manipulated into this way and done landlords lots of favours. So there's probably going to be kind of, well, hold on, that just seems to be excessive. You know, if a new lease is created and a charity takes a month to get up and running, fair enough. But beyond that, you really shouldn't be asking for or getting extra rates relief over the 80% you're already going to get anyway if you're legitimate. So again, it's just one of those moves that might happen because there's been too much manipulation going on.
The only thing I'd add to that is if you did have a ZAR or some sort of level of devolution to the local level, that I think there is uses where a charity could need more than 1 month to move in, and there should be a sort of an allowance there for legitimate use. It's only really a problem when it is that kind of extended purely for the rates avoidance that is a problem. I do think there are charities that might need longer than a month, but the issue is that's part of the problem with having these rates avoidance is the people that get hurt are the charities that actually benefit from these sort of measures put in place by the government.
Okay, great stuff. So just covering off number 4 on the left-hand side, we don't think that's going to change much. It's about small rooms. Small rooms are generally exempt. I think it's just too much admin, not enough money, and it just doesn't seem right to penalise people with those sorts of rooms. Which is interesting. You'll see some landlords who slice up big rooms into small rooms just to qualify for this relief as well, which seems like an effort. But if it makes sense from a business perspective to make small rooms as serviced offices, then it kind of makes sense. But it seems a little bit too much effort to go. Okay, so this is one Tom sees a lot. Destroying the insides of a unit. When does that work and why?
Yeah, so the idea is that if there's no possibility that no one can actually beneficially occupy a space, then it gets removed from the rating list and effectively has a nil rateable value. I think people try it a lot where they kind of mothball a building, effectively take out all of the utilities. I mean, it does work, but the issue is you are destroying your building. It's the long-term prospect of your building is reduced by doing this. I mean, I think if you want to do it, but
it's not necessarily clever.
Yeah.
Okay. But listen, I mean, we've seen some landlords who have got a good relationship with the VOA in some parts of the country. Like we're talking like an ex-Debenhams, where it's sitting there, it's costing almost £1,000 a day in empty rates. And they're like, if I strip out all the lighting, take out the toilets, will I get out of rates? And the answer is no one really knows how friendly the VOA is in that area. And if you do the same thing in a different VOA area, you may not get the same answer. So again, it's a bit of a roulette wheel job.
Yeah, there is a case. I can't remember the name of the case off the top of my head. It's the one I sent you the other day. But effectively, there's a principle that if it's economic to repair the building, then the VOA will assume it should be repaired. And I believe that the cost of that is 5.4 times the rateable value. If the VOA want to go down that line of argument, they could always do that. I believe replacing toilets is probably, in most places, is not going to cost, if in a regular shop which might have a 20,000 rateable value, it's not going to cost 100,000 to put toilets back in. So as Shayla said, and as I said, I do think it works quite often, but if it gets challenged too far, they could defeat that quite easily.
Okay, and do you think the Tsar could take on this power, or is this like he's becoming the VOA and...
I think the VOA probably is a good Tsar, if we were going to pick anyone, but yeah.
Fine, okay, great stuff. And then this is everyone's favourite, the one on the chair, the alleged place of worships. So this is the latest top topic. It does make us laugh because when we read this thing about Dover Council, and Tom was approached about this by the Guardian newspaper, it was like, it's a deep sigh of breath. It's like, are you really trying to work with God to avoid tax at one extreme? So, Tom, I'm going to let you explain this because I can't find the words to deal with this one.
To be honest, I don't think it's the worst idea in a very micro level. For example, we have employees who are required to pray once a day, and when we've been looking for office space, often one of the first questions we ask is, do you have a prayer room or somewhere where our employee can pray? More often than not, the answer was no. So I think having this sort of concept which they've come up with, which is taking an empty space and putting a place of worship in there, it's a nice idea, and I think people should be rewarded for doing that. The issue is, and for example in Dover, the council are accusing this company of having 60 places within one business park. I don't believe there's any legitimate reason to need to have 60 prayer rooms, no matter how big the business park is. On the business park's own website, they're only advertising one prayer room. So there is a level there where if you take it too far, you're going to then remove that actual genuine benefit that could exist, and that is the shame around this. It's not a terrible idea. There is some ethics there, and there is some genuine good that could happen from this. The issue is that is likely not what's happening, as The Guardian have expanded upon. For example, Rob Davis, who wrote the article, was speaking to Shailesh and I, saying how he went down to the pub, which is featured in the picture on the article, and he could see it's boarded up. There's no way that pub is actually open for religious worship. But they're arguing it nonetheless, and all it's doing is costing the council's time and money, and again, it's taking away what could actually be a nice idea.
Okay, cool. And this is another example where the veil of incorporation has been set aside, and the landlord is now liable again.
So in Dover, they're arguing currently in court along the lines of the Hurstwood argument, where they're saying there is no legitimate lease here. All you're doing is granting it to this, I think it's a Hong Kong company that actually has no right to occupy this building. You've only done this to claim this rating exemption. I don't think it's going to succeed, but obviously I can't predict that, and I don't know the arguments that are happening in court.
Okay, but this is happening in court, and
yes,
round two
across the country it's happening.
Okay,
yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, deep breath, everyone. You guys ready? There's not much more on the hard stuff, I promise. Okay, so this is now getting to the nice, fun, lighter bit. So this is the bit that we're really here for from our side, which is this is the bit that we think is not going to change much. CSR, ESG use, genuine charitable occupation, we think is the one bit that we think is going to stick and be safe. And there's a whole raft of reasons for that, which we're going to run through. So there's long-standing tax breaks, in particular for business rates. They've been around for a while. Public sentiment is in favour of supporting charities. You've seen that with gift aid. Not every country has the equivalent of gift aid, and the equivalent's there. And it's consistent with other tax breaks that we're going to tell you about as well for the property sector in particular. We've talked a lot for the last few minutes, but before I go on, has anyone got any questions at the moment? Or we can keep rattling through so you guys can get more drinks. Everyone happy? Okay, so this is an example of what might happen in terms of if England copies Wales when it comes to the box shifting rule and Bluetooth. So this visually, hopefully, will help you understand how much money is at stake for some landlords. And for some landlords, this is big. For some, it's small fry, and they can't be bothered. So let's take a simple example. If you're paying 100 grand in empty rates over the course of a year, that's your blue line. That is a choice that you have. You can keep it empty, pay the rates. Council's going to be happy with you. You're going to be happy because you've got the ultimate peace of mind that you've got your building under your control. You can do the box shifting thing, which, if you look at the first blue dot around the 43-day mark, that's where it used to be. The rules changed, so it's now at the white dot. You have to pay rates for 91 days before you can claim any relief. And then the next white dot would be you paying an agent for moving boxes around, saving rates for 3 months, and you repeat the cycle. So you keep doing that every 3 months in England. If you work with the charity sector from day one, you'll have helped the charity. Charity will claim the relief as long as they're legitimately there, so real charities only. And a lot of that saving is passed on to the landlord. So if you work with an ASTOP charity, you'll walk away with a 50% saving, and so you're paying out 50%, probably even less than that. So that's the red line. So over the course of 12 months, you'll be spending 50 grand instead of 100 grand, and you'll be spending less than you would do with a box shifter. Now, if England copies Wales, then it won't be 3 months before you have to pay rates. It's going to be 180 days, hence the yellow line. So it's going to cost you even more if England copies Wales. And if England copies Scotland, the whole game's off, basically. It's either empty rates or work with the charity sector. There'll be no choice in the middle. So this is the graphic illustration of what will happen if England copies Wales. So I think it's fairly self-explanatory. I'll come back to the big dip on that line, on the red line later on. It's another tax break that a lot of landlords don't know about. Any comments, Tom? Are you okay with that?
No.
Very happy man, Tom. It's always good to keep him happy. Okay, all right, so it's a couple of stories that we wanted to tell you about. So John Reynolds, head of business at the moment, been in post for close to a year, 9 months, I guess. He's visited, so he looks after an area called Tameside. So it's Hyde, just east of Manchester. And he was invited to visit one of our free bookshops. This is all by coincidence. So the free bookshop guys, there's a volunteer there that must have said something nice. And he said, let me come and visit. He did, he liked it. And then I'm not sure who told the royal family, but we got a nice letter from Queen Camilla as well saying, it's wonderful to see you getting recognition from the top. It's basically what John Reynolds said when we got that really nice letter about using an empty space. So the bottom line is we've got support. We do something nice with real spaces. We save people's lives, as you can see with Darren. And we do really nice things like give volunteering opportunities as well. We did ask John Reynolds for some feedback back in November, just to say, look, these are the things that we're facing. What can you do off the back of your visit? And he said he'd spoken to the HM Treasury, and this is basically what he said. I've checked the position, and they're saying they're planning to publish a consultation on going even further than what's been discussed, which is the GAR for business rates in England. This is in addition to the points of everyone's seen the whole box shifting and all that kind of model in the consultation there as well. So there's something afoot, I think, is basically the summary here. And I think this consultation coming to a close and some announcements coming out soon, I guess, is probably what we're going to see. So what we see is the only ethical government-approved option for reducing the cost of your empty rates on an empty commercial building is to work with us. Or you can do a lot of this stuff yourself, to be honest with you. We're kind of here to say, just do something good with the space rather than leave it empty. You don't have to use us, but just do something good. That would be great. So we did our own little survey, and we went out to 4 different categories of people: landlords, charities, councils, and other influencers, to ask them what they thought on some particular questions. And we'll give you that feedback now. So we've got about 130 responses. 9 out of 10, over 9 out of 10 said no, they didn't like box shifting. It just seems to feel wrong. 9 out of 10 said the same to snail farms. 9 out of 10 said that's the whole places of worship abuse thing just doesn't feel right. And all of them said, yeah, if there is something to be done with the space, then do it with the charity sector, because they're bleeding money just like everyone else. The biggest problem charities have that they report on after money is space. They can either not find the space at all in the area they need to be. Imagine a food bank in Wandsworth, versus there is space there, but it's just not affordable. So if we can give them a closed down Argos in the centre of Wandsworth where people can get there by bus because they don't have a car to pick up food, that's great. That's the kind of stuff that needs to be done with these spaces. So that's a quick summary of our survey. There are some other things in there. For example, the story about, I think Glasgow Council owns a property in Camden Council, and they did box shifting. And that's like, really? Is one council doing this to another council? And it's just like, again, it doesn't feel right. You can understand it from Glasgow's very narrow-minded perspective of let's make the most of our money. But oh my God, Bassam's kind of laughing at some point. He's screwing over another council as part of that journey. It just doesn't feel morally right at any level.
It cost Camden the money that they could have given to my jewellery shop as well.
Yeah, that's true. So calm down, Tom, calm down. Okay, that's it from us for now. I think it's now over to Bassam to face the grilling of the questions, if there are any. But also, if you can bring us your perspective, you'll be more knowledgeable about what's coming and how you guys feel in government. Thank you.
Cheers.
Great stuff. So my name's Bassam Mahfouz. I'm the London Assembly member for Ealing and Hillingdon, and I've been on the Assembly now for just under a year. Prior to that, and coming up to now being 20 years as a councillor in Ealing. During that time, most of that time, I've been a cabinet member for various different portfolios. So that's covered everything from the environment and transport, but I've also been the finance lead, business lead, so supporting enterprises and so on. And then more recently in terms of housing. And in terms of my day job, I was running a housing association community investment department, so supporting entrepreneurs, looking after community facilities. So I've been effectively a bit of a landlord from that point of view, as well as looking to make sure that, sort of working with the community in terms of taking on facilities. But more recently, the last job I was doing before I took on obviously got elected by the good people of Ealing and Hillingdon, was that I was the Chief Executive for Refugee Action Kingston. So if I tell you a little bit about what difference it made to the charity and what we were able to achieve by working with Savills. So before I came along, my predecessor had actually connected with Savills, and actually we'd gone back a little while ourselves with my councillor hat on in terms of responsibility for the environment and reducing waste. And obviously a lot of work that Savills does is in terms of very helpful from an environmental point of view. But my predecessor had secured a central downtown, centre of town location in Kingston. Probably only time in its history Kingston upon Thames will be called as downtown. But great location, right in the middle of the town centre, and took a 5th floor space in this building that was earmarked for redevelopment to be knocked down. Now, of course, I don't need to tell you where the development sector and the construction sector has been for the last few years. So I think we're going to probably be in there for a good period of time before anything happens to that building. But being in that building meant a huge difference. So when I went in there, the first thing I always do is look at the finances. How much are we spending on X, Y, and Z? And clearly one of the first things I wanted to do was look at how much we're spending on overheads, because when you go for fundraising bids and you spend a hell of a lot of time looking at fundraising opportunities, is that a lot of people will fund you for staff, for frontline staff who are going to make the difference on the ground, but they won't necessarily pay you for the overhead costs, or they will pay you for limited overhead costs. So if you're paying for significant rents, for business rates, for all those sorts of other additional costs, that is not something that you're likely to recoup in a hurry. And we had an office space which we'd been in for sort of over 20 years in that building, and it was sort of excess to requirements really, because actually we had this amazing space on the 5th floor where it just wasn't being used as well as it could do when I came in. So we then maximised the use of that space. We were using it as a classroom to teach ESOL, so English as a second language, to the asylum seekers and refugees that were there in Kingston, making sure that aligned with a job club that ran out of there with advisors that helped them to make sure that they could learn the skills and make sure they convert their CVs and all the rest of it to be able to get into jobs, because it's a massive cliff edge that you face as an asylum seeker. The day that you are granted your status, which you could have been waiting for years, and having been made a scapegoat for all of the government's ills and mismanagement of the economy and all the rest of it, is that it should be a really happy day. And actually, if I told you that previously it used to be 28 days from the moment that you got that letter that you'd have to get yourself a bank account, national insurance number, sort yourself out with a property to move into, and without any references, and all sorts of other sort yourself out with a deposit, all the rest of it. In London's housing crisis, 28 days is absolutely impossible. The government had previously reduced that to 7 days, which was just basically a sentence for many asylum seekers or newly identified refugees to be put out on the streets. The government, thankfully, has now sort of increased that back up to 56 days, so people have at least got a fighting chance. But as a charity, we had lots of things that we had to juggle with to try and deal with on a day-to-day basis. But being able to use that space to try and really support people from day one was incredibly important. Many of the asylum seekers are actually living on £8.50 a week. £8.50 a week. Right? I'm sure anybody here with kids, how many of your kids get less than £8.50 a week in terms of pocket money, right? So that's what they're living on or trying to live off week to week. So what we were able to do with the space that we had was to we got lots of donations, but didn't have anywhere to be able to sort of do anything with those donated clothes. And so we were able to make a space where people could come in with dignity, choose some clothes, tops, bottoms, trainers, underwear, for women as well. It's just some of those basic necessities which actually they can't afford on £8.50 a week, and that was transformative for the people that we were able to support. During my time, I was then able to we were able to successfully get another space just across the corridor, and what that meant was we were able to do even more in that space, and it meant that we could make additional savings from having to hire a hall to actually being able to do it in that particular location. We were activating the space that would otherwise have been absolutely dead. We were bringing people into the town centre. and making sure that we're really adding value and increasing the number of people that we were able to support as a charity as well. So during my time we were able to grow the work that we did to support well over 2,500 people locally. So I take that experience into the role that I have now. And so going forward, I guess there's sort of three key things I'm going to be talking about briefly. So one is, the first thing is that obviously Labour promised, won an election last year, a 5-point plan for revitalising our high streets. So the first one of those it was very much around tackling antisocial behaviour and shoplifting, which has obviously soared basically in the last few years. The second was around banking hubs. We've obviously seen lots of key banks across high streets move out, and making sure that we step in and be interventionists around that. The third one, which obviously I'll come to talk about in a bit more, is about replacing business rates. The fourth was about stamping out late payments, and the fifth, which again I'm going to be talking about, is revamping empty shops, pubs and community spaces. So moving on from that, of course, we're seeing retail spaces being a real challenge, as you'll all know, because of the online sector. Buying online, you don't have to pay any business rates, you don't have a space, there's no rateable value, you pay on the profit that you make, etc. So the government has been very clear about being able to trying to protect retail space against the shift to online. And so as part of that consultation, what you might have picked up is that rateable values of £500,000 or less will be seeing a reduction in their business rate liabilities come April next year. And that, of course, as Shailesh just said, clearly there's a £22 billion black hole in the finances overall. This is going to come at a net change. So actually, for those bigger spaces, the rateable value of £500,000 plus, we're likely to see an increase to offset that. But that is going to be something that's going to be introduced at the moment. It looks like April next year. And then the last bit in terms of sort of supporting charitable operations. So as you've already seen from the previous presentation, there's a lot there about closing those loopholes, plenty as there are. There's a real commitment from the government to make sure that we are closing off those loopholes. We talked about that from an income tax point of view, and we're talking about that from a business rate point of view. There's a moral duty there to do the right thing, but there's also obviously a financial imperative for the government to be doing closing those loopholes to make sure that we're getting the income that's needed. In terms of the London Assembly, we've supported the box shifting campaign by making sure that we've passed motions in relation to that. But also, they're likely to see changes around empty property relief, whether it's the Welsh model, the Scottish model, or if you look at council tax, for example, you've got a very simple model there. So empty properties, from a council tax point of view, actually you then start doubling. There's 100% payment, then 200% payment, and then it continuously increases the longer you've been in there. So there's potential there for that, effectively that model to be copied and replicated from a business rate point of view. There could be potentially higher penalties for those who obviously cheat the system, and of course potential exemptions. I guess if there is genuine hardship, going back to that point about protecting high streets. Clearly, there are certain high streets in the country which are just struggling because of the cost of living crisis in terms of bringing businesses in. So there will be some protection there around some of those small business rates relief that are worried about, if they do expand and what have you. So those genuine exemptions and protecting those going forward. The key thing is about making sure, as I'm sure you'll all agree, really about having a fairer system of business rates. One of the key things, not just on this, but on so many other things, was that when I was knocking on doors and talking to business people and all the rest of it, is that, not necessarily a party political point, but after 14 years, and particularly the last few years of a government which was just effectively sort of inactive, was at best putting a sticking plaster on the issues that were there, at worst just leaving them to fester and get worse. There are lots and lots of issues that the new government needs to change. That was the platform it stood on to make those changes, and we are going to see those changes come about. So that change is the only certainty. The clarity is that we want to move to a fairer system. Now, fair might mean different things to different people in the room, but I think it's already been set out in the consultation as to what some of that direction is going to look like, and it's pretty clear that we need to move at pace to revitalise those high streets, because we need to be able to do that. So I'll leave it as that and open it up to questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions for Bassam now? He's agreed to stay till 10 p.m. to take on your ideas. Anyone? No?
Cool.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Bassam.
Cool. Okay.
Okay, I think we've kind of touched on this already, so we think this is the answer. Obviously, we've got a slightly biased view on it, but you're welcome to take all these ideas from today and do these things yourself as well. You don't necessarily need an ASTOP or an agency in the middle to do a lot of this stuff. Be careful if you do these things yourself, just manage them properly. That's the only thing I'd suggest to you. So basically, the idea is turn your liability into an asset, achieve your ESG CSR goals, and remove that burden that you feel of having an empty building. And you'll get a lot of tax breaks along the way. But please play fair, speaking on behalf of Bassam and previous government as well, actually. It's just, let's do things right to avoid the kind of dance that everyone has to keep doing around different solutions. So we're going to invite Sanjay up in a second to speak about his experience as a shopping centre manager. Savills has worked with us for quite a long time. So basically, there's kind of three types of solutions that we have. Single charity in a single location, multiple charities in somewhere like a shopping centre, because there's a variety of units there, or when we have a mega site like a Debenhams, we've got something called the Rainbow Rising solution, where you can effectively create like a department store but with various charities in it, because some charities are just not big enough to take on something of that size alone, but they do need the space. And Wandsworth is another good example where we had a food bank in one area, furniture charity showroom in another, and this is all within the 40,000 square feet of the Debenhams as well. So Sanjay, if I could ask you to come up and tell your story. As part of the introduction to that, I just want to tell you a related quick story. So this is a single site solution. Legal & General has worked with us for close to a year now. We've been in this location. We won the Best ESG award with them last year. That was just in November. And basically they've done what we normally describe, which is, okay, work with us, put a space to good use. But they've gone one step further than our average landlord and basically said, look, well, the 55-60% saving that we're making with you, we're reinvesting all of that in the local community. So it's either bringing green stuff and spaces into High Wycombe or making it more accessible for residents of High Wycombe to go out and access green spaces. And that's something they've chosen to do off their own back. And so that's part of the primary reason why we kind of won the Best ESG award with them last year, is that they've just gone one step further, because overall they weren't worried about saving money, but they wanted to do something that would create a fund so that they could do something for the High Wycombe community. So that's just one site. Sanjay's got some similar stories. Click away.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. My experience is obviously coming from a shopping centre environment, voids are always going to be around the corner, especially when leases come to expire, etc. Now, my particular centre in Barnet, the landlord had earmarked the area for development. So quite naturally, quite a few of the voids were wall by design. I arrived and my first question to my client was, why is this as a void? Why don't we make use of the space? At that time there was a lot of resistance, but then surely we managed to get some way forward, and we were able to get some charities in, which was great at the time. But then I was then lumbered with who do I go to? Where obviously as Savills, as a big company, we've got so many partners, and I kind of had an agenda of what I wanted to bring into the town. As part of, obviously Savills has mentioned the ESG, CSR piece. Colleagues of mine introduced me to ASTOP, which was great. So obviously I met with Savills to understand a bit more about what the business offers and how the other charities could be coming in. Obviously gave an overview of what I kind of wanted from a community engagement piece, to bring the community into the town, because there was a bit of bad press around the development, especially in the borough of Barnet, as well, local heritage, etc. So, sightlines being destroyed if the development was to go ahead. So I was just thinking about how am I going to pull all this together. Now, with Savills, We were able to introduce free books, which was brilliant. The services of free books. I've been hearing it from stakeholders, town centre colleagues of mine, where they said, there's a lot of families that can't afford the books. This is where the free books come in. They could walk into the store. Naturally, at first, they all thought, how much do I owe you for these free books? Being told, no, it's free. You can take it. Just they just couldn't understand the concept. Again, it worked very well. A couple of other charities that we introduced at Barnet was more or less like a food bank. Is it a food bank?
Yeah, and support with food. But
Yeah,
they have to sell stuff to.
Absolutely. So there's donations been given to the charity where they sell products, and they any sort of earnings generated from the charity that goes back into the food bank business, which then supported both Barnet areas as well as other areas, and it was brilliant. Myself, obviously, not having the good, as much knowledge about the charities, this is where working with ASTOP, I was able to put, or we were able to put together a plan, and then go, right, let's just put the wheels into action here. Obviously, from a landlord point, there's a rate mitigation where the landlord benefits as well, but then the greater piece here is that we're giving back to the community as well. And so far, from what we've been put in, we are seeing the benefits of that. A lot of the units that we have had, I didn't think at some point that we'd ever be able to fill these because of the size of some of the units. But getting the units filled in a short period of time, it's been very positive. I don't know what else to say. I think I think the experiences that we have had with ASTOP have been really great, especially when it comes around. When we do get the new deals coming around, and we need the unit emptied within a certain timeline. So normally it's a 30-day turnaround, but then my client being my client, sometimes I say, can we maybe get the unit a bit more sooner? Luckily, with the relationships that Shellis has with his charity partners, we're able to turn it around a lot quicker. So it goes to show that it's not just a one-way relationship. We can work together as well.
Thank you, Sandra.
Cheers.
He's been nervous about that for those, so thank you for that. So just to recap on the numbers on here, so it's 100 grand's worth of market value, the rateable value of the space that's been donated in the first 12 months at that shopping centre is the value of that, and that will come up again later on. It'll be quite interesting to provide that link to. 25 grand's worth of net saving to the landlord in that same 12 months for those first units, and of course ASTOP, as well as contributing the space for free, we fund a lot of these charities, particularly the free book ones as well, to support them, not just with the business rates, but some extra funding to make these things happen. So, thank you very much to Sanjay and Savills as a wider team as well. Rainbow Rising, as I said, is the concept that we roll out when we have something really, really big. So it's a home for multiple charities. So if you are close to any charities in particular at a personal level, and the chances are they're going to be struggling with space, whether that's storage, retail, or office space, do let them know that we exist. It's free to register with us and tell us, we'd love to have a shop on the outskirts of Rochdale to do X. And we might be able to help. We've had spaces in Rochdale before and so on, but sometimes the most random ones can really convert quite well. And we've got some interesting stories on that. And there's our pay-per-click search engine guru here at the front, who kind of helps us in the most random of towns like Winchester and Glasgow as well. Seems to get inquiries from everywhere. So yeah, Rainbow Rising, the idea was that every type of charity you can possibly imagine, we will help, and they all fit into one of these letters for the word rainbow, and it's part of the temporary use aid. So this is every single unit that we've had at the Southside Shopping Centre during the last 5 years at one time or another. It started with Argos, then we got the Debenhams, and then gradually over time, some of these guys have relocated or left the centre completely, but we've worked in every single one of these units, and we're normally operating about 5 or 6 different charitable activities in that shopping centre at any one time. We're down to 2 at the moment, so Southside's doing well, but we've got only 2 units open to the public at the moment, so we're really flexible on that front as well. Again, that's just a quick summary on the example for Wandsworth. The mayor turned up as well one day, did a video together. So again, you can see all this stuff online, so I'm not going to bore you to death anymore on this sort of stuff. Okay, so just very quickly on the other benefits that come along from working with the charity sector. As I say, it's not just about us, but just generally. So you'll get financial savings faster and better than other options such as box shifting, and that will probably change even more if all these other changes that are happening are going to come to fruition. The second and third tax break I'll talk about in a second. There's insurance rules that mean that insurers actually love us more than leaving a space empty. Lights are on, that always helps with the unit, whether you're trying to relet or trying to get the positive attention from a council. And some charities become rent-paying tenants. It doesn't happen too often, but about 1% to 2% of the time, the charities do well. They can show someone how good they are, and they will get funding to then become a tenant in that space, or at least in the area, very much like what Darren Way's been able to do as well. And we've got some lawyers in the room. Stephen, would you like to wave? Stephen's at the back there. Lawrence Stevens, they were part of the presentation last time, so again, you'll find Stephen on our videos if you wish to hear what he has to say. But basically, before, during, and at the end of a relationship between a landlord and a charity, he'll be able to guide you and give you his advice on as to, okay, this is the best way to secure that relationship. So you know you'll get it back when you want, get the charity to sign a stat deck. This is how you structure the tenancy at the beginning. These are the people that you need to know. Like if you have a landlord as our landlord, or if you had a lender, you need to consent, he can kind of guide you through that journey just to give you that comfort that this is a legitimate way to do it, but you can protect yourself in that journey as well. So please do catch up with Stephen. So just to recap on a couple of things. So the extra second tax break number 2, I mentioned this earlier on, and just coming back to Sanjay's example, the landlord at Spires has donated, in essence, £100,000 worth of space. So if you imagine walking into an Oxfam shop and donating the shirt off your back and saying to them, I'm just giving this to you, you guys sell it, do whatever you want with it. You might get an email a week later saying, Dear Stephen, thank you very much for that shirt. We've sold it for £20. You said you're a UK taxpayer, so you as an individual can claim gift aid on that, and so will we as a charity. So you've handed over a piece of clothing, a donation in kind, but you're actually going to pay less tax as a result, or the charity will get a tax break. So if you imagine that in property, Sanjay's client, the landlord, has donated £100,000 worth of space for free. He's handed no money over to us in that sense. And so he can write that off his taxable profits for the year as well. It's a nice tax rate that most people do not know about. It's not a natural conversation that an accountant has with his client, because accountants are normally asked by their client, how do I pay less tax? But this is not normally a conversation they have, and the planning and the property guys don't normally know about this either. So this is, again, the magic of bringing different people together. But it works, and it's a legitimate tax break. So work with the tax man, because they're encouraging the use of meanwhile spaces. It's a piece of legislation they brought out about 10 or 15 years ago. So that's the magic that will happen. After a year, it's a retrospective adjustment. So basically, it's like your costs after day 366 is like paying no rates whatsoever, because we'll have saved you 50% on the empty rates during that 1 year, and at the end of it, you'll get basically roughly double the amount, because rent is normally double the rates, and at 25% tax rate, when you put the two together, that's what you get. There's a handout about that, again, completely free of charge. We don't take advice or charge or anything for this. This is for you to pass to your finance director, and I'm sure he'll get very excited and read it at night. Okay, tax break number 3. This one's for developers. How many developers in the room who do stuff and convert from commercial to resi? This one you're going to love. So basically, the ingredients are, you need an out-of-the-box thinking developer. You need a good planning consultant and architect, because we can't do all of these steps for you. It's not our expertise. And you need to know about your site. So I'm going to tell you a very quick story. A client of ours bought 20,000 square feet of unused office space from Bromley Council. 2 buildings right on the edge of the Bromley Council central development. It's very, very nice buildings in the sense that you could see this becoming really attractive flats, but it hadn't been used by the council for 10 years. So this was a liability for the council, so they sold it. The landlord, the owner, now knew that he was quite comfortably going to get planning to make this into flats. But what he said to us is, I want you to come in and be in our space, work with us for at least 6 months. So that kind of got us confused, which is like, well, hold on, landlords normally don't like working with us in the first place because they're feeling as though they've got costs. And they normally want flexibility of 1 month's notice. So like, why are you guaranteeing 6 months? And he basically said to us, his planning consultant, name's in the bottom right, have a chat with him. Again, you'll find him on our videos. Basically said, if we can use this space for at least 6 months in the 3 years, in the case of Bromley, sometimes it's 2 years, in the 3 years leading up to demolition, I'll roughly say it's demolition, but it's kind of where you put the first spade in the ground kind of thing, then the building is no longer regarded as a new building. And CIL is Community Infrastructure Levy, which is in essence a contribution for adding pressure to the sewage system and the doctor's surgeries and this, that, and the other. So if a building is not new, the council doesn't charge CIL on it because it's being used. It's an active space. And the definition of an active space is, has it been used for 6 months in the last 3 years? If so, you are in essence exempt from CIL. It's a long story. You need a good planning consultant to make that happen. But it worked. Everyone was happy with it, even Bromley Council, because it made the difference between making this a viable project or an unviable project. And now that site is being converted into 72 flats. So it worked out to be 750 grand's worth of CIL, 10 grand a flat. And as I say, that project wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for all of these parties coming together to work. You could go out to a commercial tenant and say, can you come into this slightly, well not slightly, really rundown building for 6 months? But you've got to leave again. And so that, well, most commercial tenants won't want to do that. 6 months is too short. And the cost of setting that whole thing up again to a fancy standard just wasn't going to work. And Bromley Council's happy with it. Basically, there's more flats, less pressure on housing. So this is seriously important. It's 10 to 20 times more valuable than rate savings. So developers, look out for this. Again, it's not a natural conversation that your planning consultant has. If you ask them, can you work out the numbers for me, they'll just do it. They won't say, can we legitimately reduce this one and work with the council to make this project viable or not? Again, it's something you need to talk to your planning consultants about, but we'll happily support you in that journey. Insurers, we had a presentation, again you'll find the video online, but basically insurers really hate voids, deterioration of the property, someone coming in and nicking the lead off the roof, the copper piping, trying to get squatters out of the building. They'll reduce your cover or double the premium, all of those reasons, and this is why people love guardians as well. So, work with the guardians even if it doesn't work for us. Definitely use them. Squatters is a big problem ever since squatting in a resi building became a crime. I think I'm right. I'm looking at the guardians now. That's a crime. But squatting in a commercial building is not a crime, or the police aren't really as helpful. So that's a bizarre rule. Again, it's one Bassam might fix, I'm not sure. But you've got a couple of weeks, Bassam, sort it out. But that's why insurers love us. So please do think about that as well. We've got insurance companies, brokers introducing their clients to us, and we've got a really good warehouse in North Acton as a result of that as well. And everyone won. Okay, so we're coming to the end. So this is one of my favorite Einstein quotes. Not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. So you've heard the story from Darren and the difference we can make in people's lives by this. Got a couple of other quick stories, and then I'm going to get one of our newest clients to tell their story as well. So we took over an ex-call centre and data centre about 15 miles east of Glasgow in a town called Livingston that no one in this room will probably ever go to. It's just kind of out there. It's got a huge rates bill. It was a data centre. They've consolidated the technology and they don't use it anymore. And we found a charity there called the Polar Academy. And what they do is they'll take 30 kids, 2 schools, so 15 kids, and they'll coach them in every weekend, minibus coach, and then they will give those kids a fighting chance at a better life. So these are kids from troubled backgrounds, quite easily could end up in trouble, and bring them in, and they will gradually, over the course of the academic year, build them up with the skills and their mental and physical resilience and tolerance to take them on a polar expedition. That's their thing. Now, they could only do that for half the number of kids because this used to be run out of the founder of the charity's garage, and he couldn't get that many kids to come in and out to pick up their polar equipment or practice skiing. And this is what they do from our building now. And one of the kids wrote a message on his 17th birthday, and he literally said, I have to say thank you to Polar Academy, because if it wasn't for you guys, I don't think I'd be here. And that wasn't just some kind of 17th birthday party statement. That was him being on this planet or not. So the spaces that you can offer in the most random spaces are life-changing stuff. We've got a parking spot in Monument next to a building, and we've got a shower box van there, which literally every Saturday is driven to Tottenham Court Road, and homeless people can shower. So if you imagine how you feel after you've done a good sweat run or whatever, and you feel fresh after a shower, you can imagine the difference just having a shower will make to a homeless person, and you kind of start that conversation with them about helping them. And it's just like they needed somewhere nearby that they don't have to pay congestion charging every day, or the excess fuel of driving from Woolwich, which is what they used to have to do every week. And it's just a parking spot in Monument on a building where they're doing the CIL exercise at the moment. So it was just like a kind of no consequence thing for the landlord, but they don't even know how much magic they're creating in the Tottenham Court Road area as a result of that. So please do keep an open mind. You know, when you walk down the streets and see a to let sign, I get excited because I'm thinking I can have that building. But you guys can have a think about the charities that you work with as well. Okay, Nick. Nick is speaking on behalf of our newest client, BSQ. I've got to ask just one question. So Legal in General did something nice, which was kind of next level ESG by saying, okay, we're going to reinvest all the money that we've saved and put it back into the High Wycombe community. But this slide basically says, these guys have given us space to fill with charities. And some of those rooms are those smaller rooms where they don't have to pay empty rates. But they've chosen to give them all to us, which means they're actually going to pay more than they otherwise would have done. So my one simple question to you to explain to these guys is, why are you doing that? Spending more rather than less and doing ESG. So if you could tell us, that would be brilliant.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, firstly, for the invitation to this event. My name is Nick. I'm a director at the BSQ Group. We are a corporate service provider based in Covent Garden. We provide a range of corporate services, including the rental of offices and company formation. In fact, we are the largest formation agent in the country through First Formations. Now, we are a very socially and environmentally conscious company, I think it would be fair to say. We have evolved this viewpoint over the years, starting with small initiatives, being that of eliminating single-use plastics within our office. Taking it further, we use local organisations to provide catering to our staff, and of course to events that we hold. And other various initiatives like partnering with local universities, providing scholarships to students who are in need. So it is very much at the heart of what we do, is the very simple answer to that question. We have taken that commitment a little bit further. We have provided a legal commitment to providing or pushing social environmental matters as well as the bottom line. Now, what we're doing with yourselves is we are providing a full floor in our offices in the heart of Covent Garden. This includes up to space for 13 organisations to operate out of. It also includes shower facilities, bike storage, kitchenettes, and showers as well, changing facilities. It is in the heart of Covent Garden. It's perfect for transport. It is perfect for your corporate clients there and abouts. As you've said, we are the most recent partner to join. We've been talking for a few months now, although we've only officially been in this arrangement for about a week or two. We already have 2 companies or organisations, I should say, who are seeking or being onboarded. So we're really proud to be a part of the work we're doing here, and we look forward to continuing the work.
Thanks. I think it's worthy of a round of applause because it's the stuff they don't have to do, but they do. So that's great. So thank you very much for that. Okay, that's bringing us to a close. We'll have any more questions again. The panel's still here. But basically, please play fair, not just on your own behalf, but it reflects on the sector as a whole. I kind of slightly jokingly said to Bassam at the start, so our property sector can't go asking Keir Starmer for billions of pounds to build 1.5 million houses and then try and chisel him at the same time over little things. So we've just got to get better at doing things fairer. It will keep Mr. Bond happy over here as well. So that's always a good thing. And please do reap the benefits of the genuine tax breaks. They're there. Meanwhile, you converting them, donating the space, getting a tax deduction for that, the savings for charities. Those are long-standing things that have been around for decades. And of course, the one for CIL as well is fine. If it makes it viable, fine. Please do enjoy the CIL saving as well. And then it's no cost. I mean, looking at my son who's 25 now, and he's been working at Marks & Spencer for 2-3 years in data science, is like the sorts of questions they ask when they're looking at new jobs is, what's the CSR credentials? What is this company like? It's not just about pay. It's definitely changed in one generation. So if you can show what you do is at the heart of who you are, then there's going to be the other knock-on positive effects on the recruitment front and all sorts of other angles as well. Plus, as I say, at least you won't lose your moral compass, so that's always a nice thing. Okay, we are all here for questions. Any questions now, or we can mingle and questions away, and there's Stephen at the back as well, and there's a couple of guardian companies, so feel free to mingle or ask questions. Mingling it is, it seems like. Okay, brilliant. So our contact details are here. There's flyers in that corner. If you want to take anything away with you, we'll obviously be in touch with you over the next few days with slides. Any questions, I'm here. Mr. Bond is here. Give us a shout. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Bond. I'm happy that's official. You're welcome. Thank you.